Materials are changing all the time. And I think it really got ramped up with the introduction of digital media. It was a tough learning curve for some, even myself included. You have to get better, adopt, adapt, or die. You know, you have to move forward.
You may be able to hear in the background there's the printer purring away on a 2-day print. I've been working on some molds, and they sent me some STL files, so I'm printing those. And so I done one on my Mono X, and it pretty much filled the entire bed. So it's the biggest thing I printed on that. It took 36 hours. I went for 25 microns, so I went for a nice thin layer. It was pretty cool. But it's come out beautiful. It did. The trouble is the curing station's too small for it. So I've bought myself a lamp, a standalone lamp, and I can just put some foil into a box and blast bigger things, because it's kind of pointless trying to do it in that thing. I've tried, but it just takes a long time. So I'm gonna have to build a box for it.
Well, sunshine works well, and though if it's the UK, there's not a whole lot of sunshine.
No, there isn't. I'm going to put it outside, I think, for a couple of days while I'm printing the core, which is too big for that printer entirely. I want to do it one piece. I'm doing that on my CRS, CL10S. So
I've got a UVC lamp that I picked up for COVID stuff that sanitizes things, and that works well for curing resin.
Excellent.
Also.
Well, that's cool. I should try that.
And it's a big lamp, so a box with foil will work great.
Okay, well, I'll try that and see how that works out. That's good. But it's interesting working with, resin prints, because obviously a lot of those materials, they're optimized for the act of printing, not necessarily what you're going to use them for. So we'll see if they work. But they're just for test things, so we'll fingers crossed. You got to try these things and find out. But what's good is, they're printing while I'm doing other things. It's not like I'm sat there drumming my fingers waiting for them. So I got plenty to get on with.
No, that's one of the beautiful things about it. It allows for multitasking.
It does. So, Todd, you're now back in England. We haven't spoken really since you've been back. It's been a week, just over a week.
Yeah, I can't. It's weird. I'm having a UK withdrawal.
Are you really?
I miss you guys.
Oh man, we had so much fun.
Yeah, it's hard to believe I've been home a week already.
I know. It's mad, isn't it? Yeah, we had a good time, and you took some tea bags back, so I guess maybe you got those to kind of wean you off and gradually taper off your UK habit.
Yeah, well, I've been drinking a lot of tea since I've been back.
That's awesome. Well, so
it's good.
I have too. This is my first whiskey for a long time. Got some Jack Daniels there.
Looks yummy. It feels like a Saturday instead of a Friday.
It does. It's weird, isn't it? It's been a mad week. So so I went away to Norway for a couple of days this week. I came back on Wednesday morning. So on the evening that I travel, I hear obviously the regulations have changed. I'm not exactly sure when things are going to be enforced. So I go onto the government website to figure out how to get back safely, and all the paperwork you have to do in advance. And the website said they were updating the website, come back tomorrow kind of thing. It's like that recent. So I come back the next day and I fill out my paperwork. It takes me an hour to fill out a passenger locator form and find the COVID test and book that, which not because I can't do it, but because the amount of faffage, and you have to organize. You have to get an account with this third party company that actually sends you the results. And in order to activate that thing, they need to send you a text message. I can't receive text messages while I'm overseas on my phone, so it was a lot of faffing around.
Yeah, it's ludicrous.
So I've done all that, and I've got my test, and they give you when you book your test, they list all the supplies. You tell them the region that you're in. So I ordered that, got that all done. I've done everything I'm supposed to do. And what's happened is basically today's the day I'm supposed to take the test. I still haven't gotten the test. I got an email sent last night saying that they're processing my order. So basically what's happening is, and I'm sure this is just a fucking racket, so I have to stay home. I'm supposed to quarantine until I get my negative test result, but they haven't sent me the test on time. But they sent me a message last night to tell me they're processing it. I fucking bought it a week ago, Monday. It's now Friday, and they haven't sent it yet. So it's like basically what's happening is you're basically taking on tests that that you can't fulfill. You already know you're not being able to ship them out on time, but you're still taking my money, knowing full well that I'll be past my day 2 time. I mean, it's just fucking nonsense. It really is.
Agreed.
I'm not saying I don't want to do the right thing. I'm saying I'm doing the right thing and I'm being punished for doing the right thing. It's fucking annoying.
Yeah, no, I I'm on the same page.
You know, it's like if you can't fulfill it,
it's a huge racket.
if you know you can't deliver those on time, then don't accept the money. Do you know what I mean? It's infuriating. Yeah. So that's annoying. I mean, it so happens I've got a shitload of stuff to do here anyway, so I'm fine. But it's just annoying if I want to pop out and get something, I can't. You know. Anyway. I'm not going to complain about that. I've got my whiskey now, so I'm all good. So we're going to talk a little bit about what this episode is, which is Jake Garber, this chat that we had with Jake Garber at the Prosthetics Event.
Great chat.
It was really good fun, wasn't it? Really nice guy.
Yeah.
I was nervous.
Packed room.
It was. I was nervous because he's a very he's been doing a lot of stuff for a long time, so he's a significant person to talk to, and I want to I'm keen to not come across like a bellend in front of him, but also you're doing that in front of a crowd. So it matters to me what he thinks of me, and it matters to me that what we do went well. And honestly, it was so much fun. I really enjoyed it.
No, he's a class act. He's a great guy, and he's a wealth of knowledge. I mean, he's done everything.
I think that's the thing, and the ease with which he relays this stuff to people is it's heartwarming, but it's just useful. It's just fucking good, useful information as well.
Yeah, I'm hoping that everybody that was in the room was taking notes, or will at least be able to listen to the podcast, because the information was worth the price of admission. Beyond the price of admission. It was a hell of a talk, and I learned a lot.
Yeah. What I liked is he's very frank as well. He just sort of says things as they are. He doesn't sort of sugarcoat anything, but he's also encouraging with it. It's a fascinating mix.
So here's Jake.
So let's get the show started. Welcome everybody.
I feel tired.
Mr. Jake Garber. I feel soon to be knighted by the Queen. We've known each other for several years, but it's been a few since we've seen each other.
Probably usually cross paths with you at like some conventions and the like in Los Angeles.
Yeah, it was an IMATS a few years back.
Yeah.
Before the pandemic.
Yeah, before the world changed. So, yeah.
Amazing. Well, I guess we'll probably take questions from people who've got questions, but there's a few things we wanted to talk about that we think would be a good direction to go in, if you're happy. You had some questions, so you were talking about like, the distinctions between
being an on-set supervisor versus being a department head versus being a makeup key, and then what it's like making the transition from essentially, I don't want to say, I'm not saying this derogatory, but being a shop monkey and to being on set, because it's a very different mindset.
Yeah,
as well as skill set.
Yeah. It is different. Again, forgive me, I'm not entirely tuned in on the UK, way to get in and all that stuff. In the States, there's unions that you need to get in to work on some of the bigger budget stuff, and it depends on the state that you're in, obviously. But a lot of, like in my path, I started out in Minneapolis doing regular beauty makeup and corrective stuff, a regular working makeup artist, because I wasn't going to make a living doing prosthetic work up there. And did about 5 years of that and kind of got to a point where this is about as good as it'll get. And I moved out to Los Angeles in '89 and was not in the union then, so I started working at shops. And one of the good things about starting where I did in Minnesota, which was a void, there was no real resources to kind of, get stuff. You had to hunt it down, and now you guys have it easy where you can, I would say you have it easy, but the resources are available to get products. You can go on YouTube and probably find a half a dozen or so tutorials on how to do a bald cap or put a lace beard on or something like that. So in my instance, I kind of had to learn it on my own or read it from books.
Because at that time, there really wasn't a school you could go to.
No, not really. There were a couple of them that were kind of branching out. Blasco's kind of had started about that point, but there really wasn't any sort of formal education as far as makeup, especially like film makeup. They used to have an intern program in the studios in Los Angeles early on, but that's been long gone for years now. But one of the perks for me was that I had to know how to do everything before I even moved to Los Angeles. I had to know how to sculpt. I had to know how to, make molds. I had to know how to run pieces. I had to know how to do hair work. I had to know how to apply, because I didn't have anybody else that I could turn to. And that was a huge asset, because when I went into the labs, Some of you have heard me say this in the past. It's like the more you can do, the more you get to do. And if you want to go in and specialize per se, well, that's all well and good, but that's all they're going to think of you as. And you're not going to be a well-rounded makeup artist, in my opinion. There are some people that strictly like to do lab work. That's all they want to do. The hours can be a little bit more regular. They can be long, but if you're on a film set, it's very, your life is taken away from you.
Well, you're first one there, last one to leave.
Last one there, your time, your call times are changing all the time. You might work something we call Fraturdays, where you end up starting Friday late afternoon, you go until Saturday morning, then you have to start Monday morning or, very early as well. So it's definitely not a glamorous lifestyle that, you would think it's, champagne and premieres and hanging out with actors. You occasionally get those perks at some point, but it's a very small percentage of it right there. So I ended up going out to Los Angeles and had established myself as a pretty good lab guy and lab supervisor. And I started doing that for a couple of shops, like Mike Burnett. Subsequently ran Patrick Totopoulos' shop for a number of shows. And I left Patrick's for no reason other than he was starting to focus more on production design. And for self-preservation and what I wanted to do, I decided to branch out, and I was being courted by a number of the shops to run their facility for them, like Steve Johnson and K&B and Optic Nerve, and I just didn't really want to do that sort of supervision, so I wanted to segue into supervising or running projects that would, take it to location. So I'd be involved in the shops a little bit to kind of determine or say this is what we would need for it, and then just go to location and then facilitate it from that point on. And yeah, kind of
So
started.
as the shop supervisor, were you involved with the budgeting process? What exactly does that entail?
Yeah, it depends on where you're at. Like at Mike Burnett's, I wasn't, but at Patrick's, I definitely was. And we handled some pretty big projects. Not all of them were great, but we did Stargate and Independence Day and that Godzilla one with Matthew Broderick in and all that. And it was well beyond our sort of means, but you really can't let that limit you too much. To me, I just looked at it as we were sculpting a prosthetic nose, making a mold of it, running it, except we were going to do a Godzilla creature. It's like the techniques are the same, they're just a little bit more expanded. And either that or I was too young and too stupid to realize what I was getting into. But yeah, but we had a budget, I think, of about $10 million for that thing, and it didn't sink the company. So, but yeah, that one is more, some people can get, if you want to do the actual makeup work itself, you probably don't want to get into sort of HOD or department head situation, because you're the one that's always going to get called into meetings, or there may be an issue on set that has to be discussed, so you have to have a good support team to handle the makeups themselves. So like when I was on Walking Dead, I was on it for the first 8 seasons. Towards the last few years of it, I rarely did personally a hero makeup, or one of the main ones right there. I'd sneak them in when I could, but I was in an episodic world. You're always thinking about one you're shooting, one you're about to shoot, and one that you have, way coming up. So you have a lot of things going on in your heads, and you have meetings for all of those potential shows, all those episodes. So I couldn't commit to, a 2-hour job on there. I'd help some people out on them. And if I knew there wasn't going to be a meeting for the day, I could tackle one, but I usually had to delegate it to somebody else. And that's one of the biggest words when you get into supervising, is delegating. You can't do it all yourself. Don't even try.
That's hard for some people to do.
It's very difficult for some people to do, because there's a lot of people, myself included, that say, well, I know exactly how I want to do this. I know the route that I want to do. I know how long it would take me to do it. But you can't. You're just going to burn yourself out real fast. Especially when you're doing, again, long-run productions. Epis, like Walking Dead, ran 7 months out of the year. And you have to pace yourself. You can't burn out right out of the gate, or you're not going to last. So you do have to learn that, and, maybe be patient with some people and just give them an opportunity to, to prove themselves on certain levels. But
well, it's kind of like a director giving an actor a line read.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's like, well, why the hell did you hire me?
Yeah.
If you're going to tell me how to say it.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes you want to give everybody the liberty to create and do their own thing, but sometimes you've got to guide them into the parameters that have been established for the show. It's not a free-for-all as far as like certain types of blood. We had a very limited palette that we would use on walkers for that show, and we really didn't want to go much beyond that. And the other thing that you have to do is you have to learn how to budget your time when you're doing the applications, because everybody that's starting out, they're doing some rather elaborate stuff in their portfolios, and it can look fantastic, and you may have taken 5-6 hours to apply it during the day. Now that's great when you're starting out and doing stuff for your own personal portfolio stuff. But when you get onto a production, you will not have that sort of time. So once you've started to, done those longer makeups, then you start to challenge yourself and say, let me see if I can do the same thing in 3.5 hours or 2 hours. And you're not sacrificing the look, you're trying to find shortcuts that can get you to that end and still have it last for the day.
Yeah, and shooting in Georgia, that's a huge challenge.
Oh,
Getting pieces to stay on in that humidity and the heat.
Sure, anytime you're dealing with any sort of extremes, whether you're doing water work, high temperature, high humidity, actors that are drinkers because they expire alcohol, and that's not good for glue down, so you kind of got to know their proclivities, and maybe hopefully they'll stave off a little bit, save it for Friday nights, but it doesn't always happen. You kind of know how to maintain it. Some people start to get flushed during the day, so you have to alter the color as you go. Some people have reactions to certain things. Some actors that are not good with latex at all and have legitimate allergies to it. Others have spirit gum issues. And unfortunately, you sometimes don't find that out until the day that you're doing it. And, there it is.
So a lot of fun, isn't it?
What do you have a go-to adhesive that you prefer?
And honestly, it's different and varies for every person and everybody. I think I tend to lean towards Prosade a little bit more on stuff. I think a lot of it has to do with because the silicone-based adhesives are changing all the time. It used to be you could rely on Telesis 5 to do it, then they don't have that. Now they've got 8, which is close but not exactly the same, or you might have Silabond, there's all sorts of options there. But there's little nuances that when you're doing them can either be a great benefit or a huge pain in the ass. Prosade for me is something that's kind of consistent. It's about as to me, it's user friendly. It's tough to work with, and that you can't just put Prosade on somebody's skin and just put the piece on there, and then hope it stays there, because it's slippery until it dries. So if you do it, what I do is I usually put it on there, wait for it to go clear, and it's only from experience that you know when to put it down, because if you put it down wrong, it's not going to come up too easy. You got to flood it with alcohol, it's a problem and all that. Plus it tends to be a little bit more durable in some extreme situations. Silicone adhesives tend to slip a little bit, depending on the environment and all that stuff, but it depends. I mean, I use Telesis for a ton of stuff. I use spirit gum for a lot of stuff. I use Super Baldies to glue down stuff. It all depends on the tool needed for that job.
So you're looking at a lot of foam for the Walking Dead stuff, or they use foam ends to look at?
Yeah, they were trying to do silicone initially, but I kind of nixed it because with silicone, if somebody is sweating under an appliance, it won't absorb into the appliance and it will find its way out. And it's usually like, let's say you're doing a forehead piece. It'll come out here, off to the side there, and that's where they'll start sweating, will come out there. Now, to try to prevent that from happening again is really hard, because even as a makeup artist or an effects artist, you have to know a little bit about physics. There's something called hydraulics. So if you've got water under there, it will find a way out, no matter what you do.
Little streams of water shooting
It'll squirt out, it'll run out of here and all that. And then to try to dry that up sufficiently to get that to glue back down again is really difficult. So for Walking Dead, where we didn't have to rely on the translucency of the material, and we could do foam latex, and it can go on very quickly. It's easier to manipulate on a generic face rather than like a silicone, which doesn't tend to compress. Or if you stretch it too much to fit, now you've got that tension on there, which will now start to cause issues on edges where they start to pull away and all that. So in that environment, I maintain that if you do something like, battle injuries or stuff where you're going to cover it with blood and all that stuff, sometimes it's just easier to do foam latex and get it on there, and you got a chance of fighting it, at least during the filming process. If you put on a silicone appliance on some people and you put certain types of blood on it, you'll notice it'll beat up on it, which really, it's a pet peeve of mine. I see it and it just never looks quite right. And it's there's ways that you can put some sealers on top of it and certain types of bloods that will roll a little bit better on it, but once it goes onto silicone, it just kind of beads up and looks like blood sweat almost. With foam latex, it tends to run a little bit better, but it depends on the blood you're using as well.
Yeah, no, it's nice to hear, because I really like foam. I was brought up on foam, and silicon's great, but it's nice to hear it still gets used a lot. And you will get people ask me, like, do people still use foam? I'm like, yeah, I've been looking at it all the time. You just didn't
Seems
know
to
it
be
was
making
foam.
a bit of resurgence.
Well, and the other thing too that I would really recommend to about everybody in here that's doing the application thing is work with foam for a while. Because if you can get a foam latex piece to look like human skin and really have it look good, you're ahead of the game. Silicone, transfers, all those type of things are 80% there. If you got a good flesh tone match on the actor, you put it on, you got a good edge blend on the thing, then you're just doing detail stuff like freckles or veining and all that sort of stuff. It's doing all the work for you, and it's fantastic for that. But if you can work with an opaque material, it's going to make you a better painter in the long run. And sometimes you're not going to have the luxury of silicone on some stuff,
How many of you have got any experience with foam latex? Just
A handful, yeah. And I know that, honestly, it's, if you have the ability to, there's some places that run generic ones that you can just buy. Grab a couple of more, make a piece. It doesn't necessarily have to even be foam latex. It can be slip latex if you want.
Slip latex is good.
Yeah.
And a nose or something like that, right in the middle of the face.
Yeah.
If you can make that look real, that's more impressive than 1,000 horns.
Yeah, and to me, the doing a walker or zombie or blood and guts or even like fantasy stuff, you have the liberty to pretty much do whatever you want. There's no such thing as a real bad makeup, because if you got a bad edge on a wound or a walker, you can put blood on it or dirt. It's covered up, not a problem. If you're putting a nose on somebody and you're trying to get it to look real and pass inspection, it's a lot more exacting and a lot more challenging. It doesn't give you the fanfare and the boldness and broadness of doing like the fantasy creatures or the blood and guts stuff, but I find that stuff a lot more challenging than doing the other stuff. And I do like doing the other stuff, don't get me wrong, but I always say it's like turning the focus ring. You just literally, you're looking at something with that, but if you're doing something that's got to be real, you got to tighten that focus ring up real good, especially with today's mediums.
Do you have a type of makeup, a particular genre that you really like doing?
Well, I like doing character makeups. I find it challenging. I think for me, it's kind of rewarding and all that. And the other challenge for me is to try to, come up with something that can be done in a reasonable amount of time when you're working on an actor. If you're designing a makeup for somebody and it's a 4-hour makeup and this person has to wear this for a number of days on production, I kind of think you're not doing your job. If it plays 1 or 2 times, great. Give yourself a 6-8 hour makeup, tag team it with a bunch of people and do it. But you're doing yourself a disservice, the actor a disservice, and the production a disservice by overcomplicating and overbuilding something. You can still get something across with the same look, but it's up to your expertise and experience to say, I think I can get this so we can get it done within 3 or less. Ideally, I always like to aim for 2 or less. Just a little personal challenge thing for me. But I just think your actor's going to be happier because they're not getting up at, the ass crack of dawn and coming in and doing, an hour of travel to, to the unit base, and then another 3 hours in the chair, then maybe some wardrobe stuff, and then they start their day. It can burn them out pretty fast.
So talk to us a little bit about the difference between being a day player, makeup artist, and makeup key.
Well, I'll just separate it. If you're on a show, you're either going to be a staff employee, where you're on the crew and you're on the team more or less the whole time, or you're a day player. The biggest advantage is you can bring your stuff in and set it up, and it's there, and you don't have to move it a whole lot. If you're a day player, you got to bring everything, and it's tough, but it's kind of fun because you've always got something different going on each day. You might be going in and doing a period piece, or guess what? You're going to be doing handlebar mustaches and sideburns for the next 3 days, and then after that, you're going to go to Star Trek and you're going to do, Vulcans for another couple days. So you have to learn how to pack your kit to have just about everything that you might need for that without bringing a ton of stuff. And the biggest perk, one of the big perks about being a day player is you get to meet a lot of people, and you get to see a lot of other artists that have other techniques or ways to do things, and you're going to learn from those, whether it's the right way or the wrong way. You can look at somebody's work and just go, shit, I'm not going to do that way. That was a nightmare. Or just go, wow, that was a pretty good tip. I might have to do that one again. And again, a lot of it, especially when you're starting, is going to be meeting people. People that you get along with, people that would say, oh, we should have, have Randy come in on this one, or Susan, or whatever. That I can, track my entire career on my first day in Los Angeles. Met that person, did that one, and it's just a spider web of, contacts, friends, connections, acquaintances that have all, luckily said, he's not only good looking, but he does makeup as well. But no.
And we put him on the basketball team.
Yeah, exactly. So, so it's a lot of it has to do with that.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. The things like crowd rooms and stuff, sometimes people think, oh, you want that's, frowned on or something. It's like, no, that's the ball pin. That's where you learn stuff and you meet people, you rubbish. And you never know who you're working with either. You work with someone who's really nice, or you're nice to them or whatever, and suddenly you find out they're running the next job. You don't know that, and it's a really good place.
And also, too, when you're in that bullpen, everybody just know right out of the gate, you're not going to be in the main trailer, you're not going to be doing 1 through 5 on the call sheet, they're probably not going to be hobnobbing with Brad Pitt or whoever. You're going to be in the trenches with everybody else, getting your skills together. And subsequently, there's probably going to be a key or a department head that might be watching what you're doing and going, okay, their stuff looks pretty good, stayed on all day, they weren't in the way all the time. Weren't causing an issue, so and then like, hey, you know what, we got another thing coming up, and you might still be a day player, but you're maybe one of the first ones called on that one a little bit more. Next thing you know, you're on staff. So and you guys are in a very unique and time, because the UK in general is exploding with work right now. There's tons coming in. And it's good and bad. The good is it gives you guys some opportunities. The bad is that it gives you opportunities because now you're going to go in there and they're going to expect a certain level of skill that you have to deliver, and it can be a lot of pressure. The minute I just told a few people earlier, if you've done a makeup and you think you did it perfect, you may as well quit. Because you've obviously achieved perfection, go become an oncologist, instead. Don't bother with this stuff. But all the good ones that I know are always looking at their work saying, man, when I did the sculpture, I should have done, poor texture would have been better this way, or maybe I could do a little bit more breakup because he started to get red as the day goes on, or, the cleanup took longer than I thought. So you're always trying to figure out little ways to do that. I do a lot of stuff with Samuel Jackson, and Sam can always see it, and he says, oh, your clock's ticking, huh? And I just, because I'm looking at him, the first application, like, okay, I think I can do this and that, but maybe I don't have a poker face with him, but yeah, he spots it.
I tell students frequently that it's okay to not be satisfied with your work, because as artists, we really shouldn't be. It doesn't mean we can't look at our work and think that's pretty good, but there's always something we can do to make it better.
Yeah.
More time, better materials, whatever it happens to be.
And I will tell you this, every one of you is going to fuck up bad at some point. It's going to happen.
It's the only way you learn.
You're going to have a mold that locks. You're going to have a prosthetic that's just fucking rolling off of the guy. It's going to happen. And, you know, I've had times where I just was, you know, I was in tears in a basement going like, how in the fuck could I do this or whatever? It's going to happen. Don't let the same dog bite you twice. You know, it's just don't repeat that thing. And I guarantee you, your mistakes are going to register more than your successes, which shouldn't really be the case. But you remember those screw ups more than you remember, like, oh man, I got a good blending edge on that thing today. It was really good. It kind of glazes over you. But if all of a sudden you're like, I couldn't believe, you know, I did a blending edge right in the middle of an eyebrow, and now I got to deal with that all day. So yeah, and again, you're going to do it. Just try not to let it happen too many times.
It's so important, I think, to hear that, because everyone will have their personal hell or something. I believe, that's me, I'm shit, I can't do it. And but it's how you respond to it. What are you going to do about that? Now you know that. You know, that's one thing, you won't do it wrong again.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you're bad or you shouldn't exist. It just means you did something wrong. You're going to fix it.
And the other one, too, is it's going to give you knowledge later on when you see somebody maybe going down that path, and you can at least go, hey, look, just be careful about da-da-da or whatever. And it gives you an arsenal to do something at the last minute. I was one of those, if you gave me a blood gag and I said, give me it right now. I'm like one of those basketball players. It's like, give me the ball, I can take the last shot. And it's because I've been doing it for a long time. And you know the problems that can happen, whether you've got a kink in the line where you're going to have back pressure on the thing, blow it out. Did somebody not put any sort of connection on correctly on that thing? Is there anything blocking the line? Are they sitting on the blood line? Has the blood been thinned? I mean, there's a million things that can happen, but you just kind of have to, you know, only experience and time is going to give you those answers. You're not going to do it right out of the gate.
Amazing. We talked to you a little bit about the supervision aspect of things, because obviously when people go to makeup school, they learn about techniques and how to make things, but then when those things go on set, it's now a different world. You know, things can be, especially crowd stuff, where you're not in control, you've got 100 things running around. And
I will say there's some skills that are some things that you need to know that is not really addressed in a lot of schools, and it has to do more with certain administrative things. One is your personal finances. You know, when you're working, it can be good money and it can run for a while, but then all of a sudden it's going to stop and you might be unemployed for a long time. So you have to kind of learn to save for a rainy day. The other one that tends to be, that's just sort of a simple one, is over here in the UK and Europe. I know Brexit has changed some things on that, but you're going to be traveling to do work. You have to know, what can you travel with? What can't you travel with? What's hazardous? Can you carry an air? You can't carry a tank onto a plane with you that's a compressed air tank on that thing. There's certain alcohols, acetones, you can't do it unless they're a certain size. Where you're going, do they have the resources so you can do that stuff? So there's a lot of little administrative stuff. You need, how do you budget a production? How do you break down a script? That seems to be taught in a lot of schools right now as well. There's a lot of little not a little, but there's some major administrative things that you need to know if you're going to get up into that level. And the best thing that you can do when you're starting out is observe the keys or the department heads. In the States, the way that it kind of works is the department head or the HOD would usually sort of design the show and maybe handle all of the, like a couple of the main players and all that. And then the key or second will do some major day players, but they're also administrative, where they're keeping an eye on the inventory in the trailer. Okay, we need to get more puffs for this one. We're running low on, pallets. We need to do that. Have we arranged, have we booked people for the next episode? Do we have that? Have we contacted people in case we have weather cover and we need to pull in different talent pool for that? There's a ton of stuff that is above and beyond the actual makeup application that is essential to your longevity in this. If you don't want to do that, ain't nothing wrong with that. You can be a day player, and the administrative stuff that you have to do is just filling out paperwork. You know, your daily time cards and all that sort of stuff. You can lock it in at that, simple. And you can go home and sleep at night. When you're a department head or a key or something like that, you go to sleep with what I call the scroll. The scroll is when you lay in bed at night and you're trying to sleep, and that list of shit to do keeps scrolling over your eyelids the whole time, and you're just constantly, it just keeps you up at night.
Oh yeah, I'll even make my list of things that I have to do, and I'll be in bed, lights off. I fall asleep just fine, but an hour or two later, my brain flips the switch on and says, "Did you think about this?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. What about that?"
It's the burden that someone's got to do that. It might not be you. I'm not like that. I'm not built that way. I'm happy to be a shot monkey and a day player, but I know my limits because I can't do that. People like Barry Gower, they did that and then they moved on to supervising and running things. And it's like, God bless, because that means people like me get work. So I can do that. So not everyone can do it.
Yeah.
But
and again, there's some people that are,
can.
again, some people are very content to be, you know, shop monkeys, lab rats.
Yeah, and you need your reliable people. You can go stick that guy in that and that's it. I know they're going to be fine all day.
And some people thrive on the stress of being in charge.
I'm an adrenaline junkie, so for me it works. But and the other thing too is that I always think, even as a lab worker, sometimes it's like you'd like to come to set, because sometimes some lab people can get lazy if they're rushed on something, and they'll go, it'll be fine, they can fix it on set. But then if you show them the problems that happen because of that issue on set, you know, don't add the blending edge, it'll be fine, it'll be okay. And then you realize, well, if it's a blending edge that's under the wig back here, that's great. But if it's running down the center of the cheek and you got a bad edge, somebody's going to get yelled at bad in there for not doing that thing correctly. So if they have to go there and at least witness the issues with it, sometimes it registers.
Yeah, and I've heard of people that have made pieces badly and then blame the person applying it. And like, if you see a picture of the piece, you go, no, it's a bad edge on that piece.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you don't make pieces, you might not know that. You might believe what you're told. So it's good to know how things are made, even if...
I used to tell people you could rappel off the edge of some of these things, you know? It's just like, I don't know. So,
yeah, there are times when you're going to get pieces that were generically made, and you got to put that forehead piece on, and son of a bitch doesn't fit. But production doesn't care.
Yeah,
Your job is to make that fit, because your AD's breathing down your neck, and they want the actor 5 minutes ago, and you're still fighting that edge.
And the other thing too that you do have to speak up for every now and then is what he brought up is you got ADs breathing down your neck, which is it does happen all the time. Luckily, I've been in a position where I bark at them pretty good, because how long does the makeup take? An hour and a half. Okay. So they come in and they said, hey, just checking to see how you're doing. Are we on time and all that stuff? And it's like, it tells me that this numbskull doesn't know math, because it's like, we're 30 minutes into it. That tells you there's how much time left? 1 hour. So now you've taken away that time, so now it's going to be an hour and 5 minutes. If I give you an estimate for an hour and a half, you can come in at an hour 31 and start yelling at me, no problem. Now, if all of a sudden the actor decides they need to go to the bathroom, or a phone call to make, or a cigarette, you know, I used to put my iPad on and have it on, like on a timer. They'd get up and walk, pause. They go off and do their thing, they come back, start it back up again. And that way it's kind of idiot proof. So when they come in the trailer, they can look and say, oh, okay, he's got 40 minutes left. So, but you kind of have to speak up for yourself, you know. You definitely have to speak up if you're in a situation where you feel that you're in an unsafe environment. There are going to be times where you're saying, well, just, okay, go up on that scaffolding and touch up that stunt guy that's up there. And it's like, oh, hold on here now. This is not the case, you know. I'm sitting here with a raspy voice today because I thought the mask that I was wearing on set was probably going to be sufficient to stop the smoke, you know, and I'll have a raspy voice, which, you know, will hang out with me for a few days. But you do need to speak up on safety issues. And if somebody, you know, gives you a hard time about it and tells, you know, well, I don't want to create any waves or whatever, no, create waves. You know, it's not worth it to injure yourself or others for something that is being rushed, or that, you know, just get on the boat, go out to that, touch up that person, come back. Where's the life preservers? It's like, no, it's just out there and back. No, you got to speak up for yourself on that. And it's tough, because I know when you're starting, you don't want to create waves or make any issues or whatever, or you'll be labeled as a wimp or whatever. But you gotta do that. You gotta protect yourselves and the people around you.
Not necessarily from a safety point of view, but I've been on films where you might have a crowd scene or something, and not everyone's going to be top level makeup, so you have people closer to camera the best. You B characters and then the C characters, so the background people might be masks or quick paint jobs, and then suddenly they're like, oh, we'll stick a steady camera in the back and we're going to have people running around. Like, well, these guys were never meant to be seen close up. So if they're going to see from behind a close up, it's not going to look great, and that could look bad on you. So you would have to step in, or someone's going to say, excuse me, I just need to point this out. And that can be a little nerve-wracking to...
It can. I stepped in front of a camera once when we were doing Walking Dead. There was a scene where we had a number of these walkers moving around, and part of the deal was they're not supposed to be fast walkers. They're lumbering and all that stuff. Well, one was trying to be seen, and he was hauling ass around the front there, and Gail Ann Hurd, one of the producers, were there, and I walked right in front of the camera, and she, what are you doing? I said, you're never going to use that take. So I was able to do it, but sometimes you have to go, and you have to let the ADs know, look, if you're going to put a camera in a crowd or something like that, look, let me pull one of our heroes and put them up here. It's going to piss the background person up because they want to be on camera, and it's like, no, we're going to get you out of the way. So, or if anything, just tell your supervisors and say, look, there's a camera that's going deep back there, and those are just background makeups right now. They're stick-on mustaches. They're not up for close-up viewing or whatever, and let them take care of it.
Yeah. But that's the value of an on-set supervisor that you're going between. If there's a hierarchy, you'll just go up to
Oh, absolutely.
you grab them and say, hey.
Yeah, just say, hold on a second, let me get, so-and-so over here to talk about this or look at it, But, you don't want to have the bad work in front. And then the HOD will look at the, the rushes or whatever and say, what the hell is this? So.
Yeah, and then it's your job for not pointing it out.
Yeah.
You should be paying attention to what's being filmed, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, and the option is not use that take or reshoot it if it's something crucial and it's a matter
bad, isn't it?
If it ain't cheap.
I even I worked on the first few seasons of Mad Men, and it wasn't makeup effects or anything. I was doing secretaries, just regular beauty makeup on secretaries. Our department head, makeup artist named Debbie Zoller, very talented, and Debbie has a little Bible there, like these are the colors we're using. These are absolutely no iridescence, none of these colors, because they weren't invented yet. So we had to do that. There's no eyeliner going on these because it wasn't the fashion at the time. So we had the ability to tell the background, if they said, can you give me a little eyeliner, it makes my eyes pop a little bit. It's like, no, it's not something that was part of the time or the whatever. Well, it looks better and all that. And I said, well, you're an actor, right? Yes. Well, the part you're playing doesn't require eyeliner. And if you go into a bathroom and try to sneak it on yourself, we will know and you will be asked to leave. And it did happen a lot, because somebody would just go in there and have that, and Matt Weiner, the showrunner, could spot him a mile away. He could sit there and go, okay, you see that girl in the purple tub? Yeah, get her out of there. And we could. We were given that much power,
I remember that something similar on Blade 2. We had all these Reapers, and and there were people you could see 3 or 4 having signature moves, so they could pick themselves out of the crowd. Of course, they're supposed to have that.
Yeah,
and it's like, no, you can't do that.
No. It's the overacting background will always be the one to get okay, back to camera right now. But then you'll see them head acting, so don't want that.
Fabulous. So we've got any questions? I guess we should throw out anyone.
Yeah. I was just going to say, where is the line between standing up for yourself and coming across as rude? How do you know how to approach that situation?
I didn't hear the second part.
How do you come across standing up for yourself rather than coming across as rude and disrespectful?
Well, again, if safety is the issue, you're not being rude at all. As far as like confronting a background performer and saying, look, this is what we're doing on you, do not change it. It's your job to do that. It's not their job. Their job is to go in front of camera and perform their character. And if they want to take it upon themselves to go away and alter something, they can then run the risk of being asked to leave. If you are concerned about being rude to somebody or whatever, again, talk to your next level boss, whether it's the key or the HOD, if they're around, and says, look, this person is doing this, or, they're creating a safety hazard, or they're treating me, poorly, or, being, inappropriate, be it language, physicality, or whatever. You're perfectly within your rights to speak up on that. And also, too, I say, if somebody says, well, you're making too much trouble, get rid of them, I wouldn't want to work with them anyway, because they're the ones being rude. So it's easier to just say, well, fuck them, I'll go play somewhere else, and believe me, there's enough work out here that you can go play somewhere else.
You had a question?
Yeah. Hello.
Hello.
So in the industry, whether it's like a technical thing or whether it's like just straight up in the industry, what's been, would you say, the greatest challenge that you faced in like just everything? I say in everything. I think.
You mean as far as like technological advances or what?
In terms of like, I guess, materials and things that you work with, but also like just if there's anything like in the industry that you've found particularly like challenging that you've like had to overcome.
Well, the materials are changing all the time. And I think it really got ramped up with the introduction of digital media. It was a tough learning curve for some, even myself included, to go from a film format, which you could get away with some stuff, to a format that is unforgiving. And I reference my comment about turning the focus ring. You have to get better, adopt, adapt, or die. You have to move forward. Years ago, when people would edit film, they would be at a table this big with reels zipping across there and snipping that. Now all of a sudden they can, you can do it on a digital format. And the ones that were saying, nope, it's never going to die and all that, it's advancing. And I mean, I've worked with, Quentin is, a big advocate of film, and he won't do anything else. And it's his medium, and that's all well and good. I love film, I really do, but I also, too, am not foolish enough to go that it's going to make a comeback. It's not. For everybody that is starting out now, you can make films on your phone. I mean, that's the only piece of equipment you need, really. When I was starting out, you had to have a movie, a movie camera. You had to buy film. You had to process it. You had to edit it and all that stuff. So the opportunity to come up with, to be creative on that level has expanded big time. I think there's a minor detriment to that in that it is all available to you. So now you can use this filter or you can use this type of effect, and they're establishing it for you rather than letting you figure out your vision and trying to figure out how to make that come off. And I can equate that to makeup as well. I guess earlier what I'd said about the foam latex versus silicone. Silicone's easy. If you get it on right and you start doing your airbrushing or your detail work on there, it can look fantastic. Foam latex takes some work, but it depends on your end game,
So you've had a big journey through makeup.
Mm-hmm.
If you start off as someone starting that journey, one piece of advice that you'd give yourself now, what would that be?
Patience. That's easy. I mean, I luckily did have patience because I was from an era where insanitis was not there. A lot of people are impatient. It's a very immediate society, immediate feedback, like, dislike, all that stuff. Patience is absolutely the one thing that you must have for this stuff. It's not going to happen overnight.
I would add, learn to have a thick skin. Much easier said than done, because you will get a lot of rejection.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. But again, that even falls into the patience category, where it's like you got to wait for that moment to present itself. And the other thing too that makeup can be a very physically demanding job. Not just the getting up in hours and early, but if you're on a location that dictates you climbing up and down hills, or, you know, going through, you know, swampy areas, or being on a mountain that's got snow in it or something like that, it can be very physically demanding. And some people are okay with that. Some people would rather do studio work, and both are acceptable. But the other thing is, if you get a job where they say we're going to be working in the Mojave Desert for 5 months and you don't particularly like heat, you may want to consider whether you're going to take that job or not, you know. So, yeah.
And you,
Is there still a market for gelatine pieces? Because I know there's latex silicone, but...
No, I've used gelatin on stuff. A couple of good things about it is you can run those kind of in a trailer quickly on your own, depending on how you seal them, because gelatin won't melt kind of just on its own, because the melting point, depending on the formula, is kind of well over like 100 degrees. What accelerates the melting and the issues on that is salt with the sweat. So the combination of heat and salt on that thing causes the gelatin to start getting mushy and all that. A lot of the ready-made gelatins, gel effects and things like that have a lower melting point, and it can be a disaster on certain things. But no, gelatin's a perfectly good one to use, you know, in a controlled environment.
I know a lot of people that just use it to fill a mould and go, right, that's how much silicone I need.
Yeah.
It's kind of a...
Yeah, I mean, yes, yeah, you can do that. But again, it's you know, whatever's right for the job, you know. And again, I've used gelatin for a number of pieces. I mean, if you're doing them on, you know, you can do them under somebody's eye. You don't have to deal with blending the edges with, you know, alcohol or anything like that. You're pretty much using water to kind of break it down. So yeah, there's definite advantages to using gelatin.
I have encapsulated gelatin before. You could do that as well. That would help.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How did you work on the confidence in industry? Like, if you're not the most confident person to put your opinions on something or tell someone that there's something wrong, how did you work on those?
It's a good question. I don't want to say that I had a lot of confidence, but I was kind of growing up, and I had some good feedback on stuff, so I did have some confidence going in on things. A lot of it has to do with what you're comfortable with and all that, and there's a lot of people that are very shy and very quiet about it. I'm well aware that I've had a privilege on a certain level, and that, you know, you get into some issues where I'm a tall, white male, and those are acceptable things to a number of people in the past and all that. It doesn't necessarily mean it's right. I know that I did have that privilege. Somebody instinctively will always, you know, they'll go to the taller person and just say, well, you know, we'll talk to him, or whatever. Doesn't make it right. But the confidence has got to come from within, and your skill level and all that. And honestly, even if you are not the most confident person, maybe say you're working with somebody that's, you know, that may have a little bit better thing, and say, by the way, you should talk to so-and-so about that, and work on it. You know, it's a skill that you do need to have. You do need to have a bit of assertiveness on some things, because sometimes you'll get an actor that'll say, well, I want to do this. And then you're like, oh man, I had a situation, I was doing something on Kurt Russell for Death Proof. And we had a situation where he wanted to do this collodion scar on his cheek, and I was dead set against it, because collodion pops and cracks and splits over the course of the day and all that. It looks kind of neat, but it was going to be near his eye, and I didn't want to do that as well. So he came in and was kind of doing this, and he said, look, I've been doing this for 50 years. I kind of know this. And I said, I've been doing this long enough too. And look, give me a day. Let me run this thing. If this doesn't work for you, we'll do your collodion, and I'll chase it all day for you. So we did it, what I did, which was a transfer piece, run under his eye into a beard line. Stayed on all day, no trouble, looked good. End of the day, Kurt looked at me and just said, you know, you're right, this works better. So, but you also have to be prepared to, he says, I don't want to do it, and, you know, get the hell out of there. So, but yeah, just work on your confidence. You know, it's, A lot of it has to do that, you know, you may not see some of these people again, and I took some acting classes early on as well. And there's a point where you take some of these freeing exercises where it's like, I don't care, you know? I'm not insulting anybody. What I say is what I'm saying. Nobody's being harmed by what I'm saying about it. So, yeah, speak up. Cool. And next time, say it louder.
You had a question.
Speaking of louder.
Do you often have to deal with silicon drawing inhibitions when you're working in the studio?
Personally, I have not. I've sort of left the lab work to others. I tend to be more involved in the on-set stuff and the application of it, but I do know that, yeah, there is issues with it. There's everything from inhibition to having to buy a new set of tools that you may have been using on a sulfur-based clay it's hypersensitive. And yes, there's inhibition problems. And unfortunately, I don't have the knowledge to tell you what to kind of look out for. If one says tin and one says platinum, don't let them play together. Yeah. You got to ask Neil. He's probably more tuned in on that than me. I know he is. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you were a freelance worker and you got a job in a workshop, what kind of stuff would you expect that workshop to provide, as much as like materials, and how much would you have to finance yourself?
Usually if you're going to work at a shop, you will need to have a certain set of tools that you would come in with. So you say your molding tools, mold making tools, your sculpting tools. If you're going to do some painting, you should have an airbrush and some other bits right there. If you're doing hair work, you should probably have scissors, whatever. It's more like the expendable stuff that they're going to supply. So you don't have to come in with your paints. You don't have to come in with glues. You don't have to do anything like that. They're going to supply all of the silicones, the alginates, the plasters, all that sort of stuff. That's something, if there's something that you're comfortable working with, you know, it doesn't hurt to have it around, but it's mainly, you're supposed to go into work with tools. And it's the same thing with makeup. You know, you're coming in with your tools. The trailer should be supplying everything from puffs, removers, foundations, all that stuff. Now, we all go in there with pallets of stuff that we're comfortable with and we know how to use and is sort of industry standards. Bring those. But if you're on a show long enough and you deplete it, you can certainly say, I need a replacement grunge pallet for whatever.
How much time do we have left? Oh, okay.
10 minutes.
Okay.
So, who are you envious of? Who's got a job that you've always wanted and they've worked on instead of you?
Actually, there's a handful of them. Like Kazu has got some great stuff, but Kazu's the Jimi Hendrix of makeup effect stuff. Everybody's kind of at this level, and then Kazu's up here. He's got a third eye, and he's a really, really great guy. And I love that sort of work is the stuff that I would aspire to do. Like he did some stuff for Manhunter, where he made people look like, you know, these serial killers like Manson and all that. It's out of this world. You know, and the stuff that was in Bombshell was amazing. Mark Collier does some fantastic stuff. I mean, there's a number of, Neil does great stuff. I was talking to him about something he did on Andy Serkis on Long Shot that really impressed me. I used to admire the more like the big shop owners like Rick Baker and Botine and all that, and I do admire them, but I don't aspire to be a shop owner and have that sort of a life, because honestly, there's a lot of finances involved with that stuff. You know, you may be making a lot of money on shows, but when that's not working, you still got to pay the overhead for that whole time. And that was something that I kind of found out early on. I said I'd rather be a freelancer and kind of bounce around and deal with that sort of irregularity.
Any other questions?
Is there anything that you didn't really expect going into the industry when you started, like that you found out now through experience and things?
Oh, something that just sort of snuck up on me once I was in? Off the top of my head, nothing really, because I think when I came in, I was sort of expecting some sort of chaos that would go on, and it is indeed there. So you always sort of improvise to what happens or what's presented to you. Yeah, you get curves thrown at you all the time in life, you know, and you just kind of deal with them. I tend to not get too worked up over a lot of them because, you know, stuff that's either out of my control or whatever. You know, when I get worked up over stuff, you'll know it. It can be pretty vocal, but yeah, usually it just kind of, you know, like a hockey goalie, you know, don't let it get past you. Yeah.
We had one
And then we
right
had
over here.
Yeah. Yeah, you're in the, yeah. You get, oh, you waiting for that.
Yeah, it's just a bit more of a general question with like dealing with the hours that you work and how inconsistent sometimes can be in going to places and all that, and like how you kind of deal with that in like your social life, I guess, and how your relationships with people can change, I guess, having to work all these crazy hours.
I've never been married, and I'm currently single, if that tells you how it works. It's very difficult. And I usually kind of warn some people. It's like if you're with somebody and you want to get into this thing, they hopefully are understanding of it. Because it's very difficult to plan any sort of social life. Even when you're on a show, you know, they said, well, I made plans for Friday night. And it's like, well, I don't know when we're going to get done yet. You can plan stuff for me noon Saturday until noon Sunday. That's when I'm available. And then outside of that, I'm going to bed early on Sunday, and I'm probably going to sleep in on Saturday morning. That's one of those kind of, you know, going back to your question about the things that you really kind of don't know. And there have been plenty of relationships that have worked, and your social life is okay, but I've met a ton of people all over the world that I've had, you know, I don't know as I would have traded that for, you know, anything else. Everybody's got a story, everybody's got a unique story, and I kind of like hearing that stuff. And I usually have a phrase where whoever goes to the grave with the most stories wins. So, yeah, start stacking them up. Yeah.
Speaking of stories,
Yeah.
we were having a little chat yesterday with Joe Nazaro
Mm-hmm.
on a project that he's working on, and came up in the conversation a life cast that you were involved with that somehow was a Dick Smith related project.
I was doing, what was it, Death Becomes Her.
Yes, yeah, that.
And Dick was there, and I was in awe of him, and still am. And Tracy Ullman was coming in for a life cast for a part that subsequently got taken out of the movie. And it was a very tight schedule in that we had to get this cast done and all that stuff. But Kevin Haney was running lead on it. Kevin's nickname is Kevin Zaney. Kevin can, you know, get very particular about his things, like the exact measurements of alginate back then, and the temperature of the water, and the length of the bandages and all that. And Kevin kept hounding me about this stuff, and I kind of was like, well, it's hotter now because she's going to be in here in 20 minutes and it shouldn't dissipate by then. And I was doing that, and Dick was kind of like, I think the kids, I think he's going to be okay, you know, just let it go. And then we did the life cast and went fine. And the mold maker that I was working with there is a guy named George Engel, and George decided because sometimes you can mix plasters and stones to get different things. You can add ultracal to hydrocal to get some things that are a little different. Well, we found out don't mix peach stone and ultracal together. So we mixed this stuff. He did a brush up into the mold. We went to grab lunch. We came back and we looked at it, and it was still kind of chalky. And yeah, we took it out, and luckily it didn't lose most of the detail. It was not a real good cast, and Tracy was already on a plane coming back here. So we kind of, you know, futzed with it before Dick saw it, and we kind of passed it. But yeah, it was definitely, I was one of those, remember I said earlier, you're going to fuck up something. It wasn't me, it was George. But I was around, and I would have gotten the brunt of it too.
Yeah, a few things like that. Yeah, this is what you're saying. It's
They're the ones that make your palms sweat.
Yeah,
And make other things pucker up. So, yeah,
it's how you respond to that. It's like in the moment, there's also, you know, the tears and the fear of, and you feel
Yeah.
it's so stupid, but at the same
I'll
time,
never
how do you
work
respond
again.
to that
Yeah,
at
yeah.
the time? But yeah, fix it best you can.
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Go
I
ahead,
was just
yeah,
going to say, can any of you guys tell us any more about any times you've messed up?
Last week. Nothing
yeah.
specific.
This goes to my thing where I can't stand vinyl bald caps. Hate them. I did something on Walking Dead where John Bernthal was supposed to have his head shaved for something that was happening down the road. So we said, we just got one day, we'll do this thing. And I had a latex cap lined up, and the guy I was working with, well, let's just do it. It's going to be for a brief amount. And I finally got sick of him moaning about it. All right, fine, do it. We got a delay. It was hot. John was running around. This thing was splitting and cracking. It was an absolute nightmare. And I went into the trailer after that, and I threw every vinyl cap into the trash. I said, we're never using these fucking things again. We're using latex because it doesn't split and all that. And that was on a production, you know, and they kept going, Jake, it's starting to peel. Like, it's not peeling up. It's splitting. It's cracking. You know, it's a bust, you know. So they had to go in and do a bunch of digital fix-up on the thing, which, of course, they didn't like. So, yeah. And that one wasn't too long ago. That was maybe about 6-7 years ago. So yeah, but yeah, that was a pretty good fuck up.
I think as long as you're planning on working in the business, you can expect to be making mistakes. You just want to try not to make the same mistakes over and over again. You want to make different mistakes so that you keep improving.
And I will give you one little tip: if you do fuck up, don't say anything in front of the actor. Because then they're going to go, what are we just talking about? Just, you know, just kind of keep it to yourself and go talk to somebody else on the side. How the hell do we fix this? Yeah, don't do it with the actor, because then their head's going to be spinning. So don't do that. Lie. So, all right.
Yeah. Thank you all.
I think they're going to shoot us because we're done. All right. Hey, thanks guys for coming out. I'll see you guys. Good.
I guess we should say thanks to Gorton Studio and everyone and the Prosthetics Event for organising the Jake Garber chat, because it meant we got to have a fucking blast, which was awesome.
Oh yeah, and thank you so much to them also for bringing me over for the event and to get me down to Falmouth to teach in Neil's master's program down there with Brad Greenwood and all the folks in the master's program. I had a blast down there.
Yeah, Brad's nice, isn't he? I really like Brad.
Yeah, he's a hell of a fella.
Also, thanks to Bolton for taking so many pictures and organising all the visual stuff, because they set up the cameras and everything and helped us out with the recording. So thank you, Bolton, for that, because you guys have been big supporters of us for a long time and helped us out.
And then thank you for having us to Bolton after the Prosthetics Event.
Yeah, well, we recorded, a couple of...
It was a whirlwind 2 weeks, man.
Yeah, it was.
It was incredibly productive, and I had a freaking blast. It's been 12 years since I was there, which blows my mind.
Yeah, well, let's not leave it that long again.
And we packed a lot in 2 weeks.
We certainly did. I think one of the highlights was going down to Portsmouth and having a look at the the historic dockyard, where I managed to myself
banging our heads on low beams.
I did. I managed to draw blood on a beam next to where Nelson died. So we can both say that we both took one for the team and on victory, which is cool.
Yeah, I've still got a little bruise on the top of my head.
So that's it. That's all I have to say, really. That was an awesome episode. I really, really enjoyed our time talking to Jake, and I really enjoyed editing that down and listening through it again. Do you remember we were going through it, making notes and stuff, and it was like an education just re-listening. So
yeah, no, it sounded as fresh the second time through as it did the first time, and it's information that doesn't get old.
Yeah. All right, dude. Well, until next time, thanks very much for making time. I know I messed you around with the times today because I completely forgot about the tree that we were picking up.
No worries. Yeah, you got to do what you got to do. I'm off to the post office to drop off a package for one of my COVID masks that I am sending off to a fella in New York.
Cool.
And then I got to come back and cut some stencils on my silhouette cameo cutter. Yeah,
very cool.
For a photo shoot I'm doing on Monday.
Oh yeah, you got that
for women's rights.
Cool.
Yeah,
so busy boy.
Got some stencils to cut. Yep, we both are. It's nice because December is usually pretty slow. Oh, Donna must be home. Saying hi.
That's awesome. All right, dude. I will speak to you soon. Probably before the next week because we've got to get our next episode out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cheers, dude. Thanks very much, man. Good to speak to you.
Likewise. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
You can get in touch through our Facebook page or email us at stuartandtodd@gmail.com. Check the show notes for more information. If you enjoyed this episode, tell someone else and help us grow by sharing it on social media. Thanks for listening.